Welcome. Today we're going to get together and we're going to talk about the Leader Standard Work System. Primarily we're going to focus on Huddle boards and the Huddle process and how that creates the sustaining lean improvements across the entire organization. We're going to learn a little bit, read a little bit, and we're going to do some take action work today. Good luck, and we'll have a lot of fun. Thank you. And performance boards. Leader standard work. How huddles and performance boards work as it relates to that. That's what we're here to talk about today. And we're going to do more than talk. We're going to do mostly not talk. We're going to do mostly work. So you know that we've run some model cells, right? And we're getting some results. We're getting some action in different ways. We took people through the model cell process, and it seems to be last time we were together as the full management team talking about lean. We talked about how the Kaizen week works, how the model cell works, and how we have to build the current state map, the future state map, do the problem solving, all the way through building the performance board as it relates to the value stream and the huddle, and the people are doing this. So for the existing model cells we have, this is being done, even though it's being done in kind of a startup way. Some of that over a year ago, it's about baby steps, building our skills at the same time while we're doing the work. The idea is that these performance boards and these huddle boards will help us manage processes in two ways. It'll help us manage the ongoing daily work that's done in the process to make sure that we stay on track. And the other thing is we have a continuous improvement forum that we can get together on and talk about how to improve the process when things don't work the way we want them to, because processes don't stay the same, customers' expectations don't stay the same, and so we have to be able to adjust on an ongoing basis. That's all knowledge you already have. It's the history of where we're at, right? So one of the things that I've talked to your executive team about is that if that's good for a group or a functional area, is it not good for more groups or more functional areas? And how do we go about doing that? And the leadership team is like, I don't know, how do we go about doing that? One of the things that I've talked about is that in order for leaders to take accountability for their work, they should have performance boards for their departmental level. And below them, the team members would have performance boards as it relates to their work. And oh, by the way, Ted should have a performance board about how my iPro is doing overall. Doesn't that make some sense? It's good for the goose, it's good for the gander, right? And so your executive team said, hey, you're making work for me? And I said, well, I'm not making work for you, but if you want this to work well, this is what has to happen. So I'm saying that a little tongue-in-cheek, right? But my thought was, let's go see where this is being done in an organization somewhere else, and see what that looks like, and then you can make an evaluation at the leadership level if you think this is the right thing for iPro or it's not. And so, as you know, they had an executive offsite here in Salt Lake, and with Patty's help and some of our connections, we created a go and see opportunity at Intermountain Healthcare out in Salt Lake. It was a half day that was focused on the role of leadership as it relates to lean and the interaction that happened between the performance boards and the corporate goals of the organization, how they link together, and how the huddle meetings were being done. And actually, it was an experiential process, so it wasn't the people coming in and just telling us what that looks like. It was actually going with them into their workplace while they were doing it. So as a leadership team, the entire group, including your board, went along, broke into two groups and went along, and actually went to huddles and saw how they were done at cascading levels in the organization and what information that people were looking at. And they asked them questions about how they got there, because their process was 7 to 8 years experience of doing this, and had changed significantly over time from where they originally started. And so afterwards, the leadership team got back together and said, I think we should do this. And so what is this and how do we go about doing it? Became the next questions, right? And so if we have model cells that are doing some work on this already and we've decided that we want to have cascading levels of this in the organization, for me that is somewhat the definition of leader standard work. So what standard work do we need to do as managers and leaders in the organization to perpetuate how the model works? And in order for us to decide to take that on to do that, we have to know what the heck you're talking about. So one of the questions from the leadership team is if we've done this as an experiment in some of the model cell areas, not everyone has seen what that looks like. So we need to understand that a little better if we're going to do it in some way. And then the question becomes, as a group of professionals, and a lot of you with scientific background, you say, show me exactly what perfect looks like, and then we'll make that ourselves. And that is not the approach. The approach is we are going to fumble our way forward, understanding the purpose and outline, but really what you're going to do is you're going to make the system that is effective for you and your organization. So I've helped multiple organizations do this over time. I've seen lots of other approaches to this, which included you have to follow this thing and you can only do these things, and I say that doesn't really work. This is really about what works well for iPro, so let's make what works well for iPro inside of a loose structure, understanding the purpose of what we're trying to achieve. So, the organization's made a commitment to move forward. What we want to do today is we want to be able to say we're not going to let perfect get in the way of starting or get in the way of better. So we're going to start with what we build ourselves. But in order to do that, I got to show you a little bit about what we're talking about. So there's a couple of components here to show how this system kind of works together. That's what we're going to explore today, and we're going to practice a little bit hands-on. As I stated, in order to get a sense of this, we took the leadership team to Intermountain. One of the things that we're going to do is we're going to show you some YouTube huddles. There's tons of them out there right now, and the performance boards that are out there. Part of what you're going to see is none of the performance boards you see are going to be the same as the other one. So the point is don't worry about making them all exactly the same. We're going to work from guidelines in order to make that happen, and they should be relevant to the goals that you're trying to achieve in your department, and that's what we'll talk about. So, leader standard work purpose and mechanisms we're going to look at. We're not going to review the strategy map. What that means is what are the objectives of the organization. So this is part of the agenda that I worked with the leadership team this morning. And those things are still, they're working to finalize them, and you'll be getting communication on them. And the idea is that we need to know what the objectives of the overall organization are for us to sort of drive towards delivering on them. And I know that, I'll just be quite frank, your leadership team has expressed with me that they know they need to create more clarification as it relates to that, so that people could see it in a more effective way, and how those goals are cascaded throughout the organization. Part of what we're going to do here is we're going to have, through the Huddle boards, a way to cascade and represent that information. And keep in mind, there is no magic wand to wave over this. This is going to be clunky, slow, and disconnected to begin with, but if we get started, it'll start to improve over time, and that's the goal. So we should be able to measure ourselves from that perspective. So the OBEA, can anybody define this word for me, OBEA? Anybody here speak Japanese? OBEA means the big room, and it means the big room. In the big room is generally sort of all the goals and the tracking against the goals. This is something your executive team is going to work on building. And one of the things they saw at Intermountain when they went there, and Intermountain didn't have any problem sharing what they were trying to do in their organization, warts and all, in front of us when we came there. It's a matter of making things visible and visual at their level. So when we talk about creating visual and visible workplace. Your leadership team is working on that themselves, so it's sort of like what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Everybody's doing their part to sort of drive towards the pieces of this. So that's what that meant. So today, with your executive team, we talked a bit about what is the OBEA, how does it relate to what we saw in Intermountain, and they're going to start working on that. So that's a TBD for you. You'll be seeing more about this in the future, about where this information is posted, but that's their work. The other is, I use this draft division performance boards. I don't know if division is the right word. Every organization is different. These are slides that I use all over the place, but your executive team each has responsibilities for a functional area. There should be a performance board for that area. And your leadership team is committed to starting to build those for each of their own areas. And then the leader Camel Walk structure. So as part of the process improvement, there is a structured, what we call a Camel Walk, which is going from board to board and learning about different parts of the process from a leadership perspective at successive layers in the organization. So we're going to talk more about these in a level of detail below that. Feel free to interrupt me a little along the way, but let me go a little bit more into the information.
I have a question.
Sure, please do.
Trying to visualize this. So many of us in our department have like a contract oversight. So my contract might have 16 tests that are required as part of the contract. How would the performance boards relate to that? Are you trying to get a performance board for each task?
We're going to find out today.
Okay.
So this is going to be, because there is no one answer or no single or good answer potentially for that. What there is we're going to start to try to draft this, see what it looks like.
Okay.
So you're going to have to bear with me. We're going to, rather than think our way to a new way of doing it, we're going to act our way to finding out what the answer is. That's going to be our goal, what we're doing. So let me give you a little more detail on that. So as you know, just as a review, leadership's primary responsibility: continuously align purpose, process, and people. Purpose, the goals. Process, is this the right process and is it performing the way we want? People, the work that people do every day, aligning those things with each other. Okay? So if we're working to align purpose, process, and people on an ongoing basis, what is the mechanism that we use to do that? Leader standard work, including huddles and performance boards, is a mechanism. It's not the end game, it's the mechanism for this purpose, to bring those things together. The what, the how, and the who are constantly being aligned to make sure that we're delivering on the purpose with the right process and the right people are involved. Today, that may happen in, a variety of different ways or abstract ways, out of sight of each other. Tomorrow, we want to align these boards and the information on them and the routines around them such that we can have a regular mechanism to do this. When I talked about elements to the strategy deployment, I'm talking about the objectives, and this is what your leadership is working on. The vision for the organization, maybe even above that, the strategic goals for the 5 years, what those breakthrough objectives are, how that might work in the department, how that links to improvement priorities, how we do Kaizen and test. Okay, your words for Kaizen and test here are model cell. How we do model cells and test new processes, how we implement, and then how we do reviews, daily, weekly, monthly reviews, and how that information flows back to, at the high level of the organization, that it's being incorporated. The idea is that throughout this process, as the leadership has their OBEA, and they publish and share their objectives, the goals for the organization in strategic and more tactical terms, and the departmental leaders have the departmental goals at their boards, and the team members at a layer below that, however they're organized, to your question, I don't know yet, however they're organized, can see the threads between the objectives of the organization and the boards themselves, people say things like, I don't know if I agree with that goal. I'm not sure that that's the right goal. But in each layer of that, the catchball process is that the team members that are engaging now in a more mechanical way with the information rather than an abstract way. I think this is what my organization wants from me. We have a way to provide feedback and align the activities of people up and down throughout the process to try to make sure that we're doing the right things in the right order with the right focus. Okay? That's the purpose of this overall, is that we have everybody working on the right thing at the right time with the right expectation of the outcome, and we have a way to converse with each other in a more mechanical way that shows us what information we have at each level, and we can have frank, fact-based discussions between all layers of leadership and management about are we doing the right thing. It aligns and focuses process and goals vertically and horizontally, so between departments and between layers of the organization, and it requires a different type of trust and interaction between the people along the way, but it gives us the ability to talk about what are we working on the right thing or not, and everybody listens at each level. That's the catch-ball process. Okay? Let's go. So what are the leader standard work components that are in the middle of this thing that I'm talking about? Let's take a look here. Goals through strategy deployment, structured time in the Gemba or wherever your Gemba is in the workplace, define schedule of questions and behaviors. How do we operate in this environment? Okay. Monitoring the operational execution against goals through those walks, board to board, to see how those goals are linked, and if we're ahead or behind, and we're achieving them. And then monitoring the continuous improvement process. So not only do we have to achieve our goals, but we have to also have a responsibility to continuously improve our work. Okay? And the status of that is on the performance board. And then engaging team members, how do we do that? Asking the right questions, looking at the ideation part of the performance board, and how we're delivering on that. So these components link together the different corporate goals, so they align the purpose, the goals, the process, the improvement of the process, and the running of the process, and the people to the work on an ongoing basis. So, in the process of doing the Camel Walks, there are some behaviors that we expect from leadership. So, the Camel Walks themselves are not a punitive audit designed to create scarlet letters for people and punish them for non-compliance. They're not that. What they actually are is a way for leadership to grow the skills and capabilities of people and understand the current scenario. So it flips from the traditional top-down, just do as I say, so I'm going to be extreme, I know you don't do that here, but just do as I say model to I am the servant leader, I'm here to help remove roadblocks so you could do your job more effectively. And this is the mechanical way that I engage throughout the process to understand what gets in your way of doing the work on a daily basis, and do you have the capabilities and skills necessary, and if you don't, that's my responsibility to figure out how to deal with, in order to drive to achieve our purpose and to deliver our continuous improvement that we expect out of the organization. So if we're out there and one of our key tenets is that we value problems, how do we value problems?
Take them seriously.
Take them seriously? You bet. What else? This shouldn't be hard work.
Observations.
Huh?
Observation.
Observation?
And also potential for improvement. If you have problems, you have something you can fix.
Right.
And resolve it.
Solutions.
Solution?
Possible solutions.
You gotta be careful with solutions. Now, if we start proffering solutions to our team members, who owns the outcome of that? Them or us?
Does.
It's dangerous, right?
Ask for input.
The way to bring people to solutions is to get them to see the solution, not to give them the solution. So I think from that perspective, that's where we want to go. We got to be really careful with our behavior here. What else?
Identifying the root causes.
What happens when somebody comes up and says, I got the biggest problem, and it's going to screw up your whole day?
My day or your day?
Your day.
I don't know about that, but let's see. Let's see you.
So here's my natural reaction as a manager when I'm working in the past when I was a top-down manager. So what did I just say when I did that?
I'm not interested.
Don't bring me your problems, I got enough on my plate, right? If you're gonna value problems, you gotta say, and this is what I had to train myself to say, as a problem, that's a good one. And I'm gonna enjoy working on this with you. So, you gotta kind of flip that behavior in some way as well. You gotta value problems sometimes by asking what the problems are, right? So that's one of the crucial things here. What are the problems that you're dealing with on an ongoing basis? And, a lot of times as leaders and managers, we don't often say, tell me your problems. We're kind of hoping we don't hear any so we can get to our desk, right? So, but this is a different model, right? We need to know what your problems are. And you need to be able to be showing us through it. So, develop root cause thinking by doing what?
Asking questions.
Pardon?
Asking questions.
Asking questions?
Listening.
Pardon?
Listening.
Listening? Not doing what?
They're providing solutions.
Not providing solutions?
Jumping to conclusions.
Not jumping to conclusions? Exactly. So you got to develop people from a root cause thinking. The other thing that you have to add to that recipe is patience. So if you're going to take time to figure out what's at the root cause, that takes time. It's easy to proffer a Band-Aid on a symptom, but if you're going to find the root cause and actually solve it, you're going to have to take a little disciplined time in order to do that.
Now, question on that one, from my IT standpoint. Sometimes you'll throw a Band-Aid on to then take the time to put the root cause. Is that unacceptable?
Of course.
There's
There's different kinds of problems, right? Let's just say you don't do this here, but I'm going to use this as an extreme example. Let's say my job is to drill holes in a piece of steel on a production line. If the bit breaks, I don't stop making stuff, I replace the bit. But if it breaks 12 times a day after the shift, we better talk about what's going on. So in the IT world, if the system goes down for the organization, we can't say, all right, everybody take about 4 hours, we're going to do some root cause analysis here. You need to get it up and running, right? But then we document what went down, at what time. We start to gather information because we are going to have to do some root cause. So it depends on the urgency of the problem, but the point is we recognize the difference rather than get it up and running and do it 5 times a day and consider that the standard.
Correct.
If you're going into the Gemba for a Gemba walk, you're going to get a deeper understanding of the process. How are you going to get a deeper understanding of the process when you do this work? When you meet with your people? What are some of the tools that will help you get a deeper understanding of the process?
Workflow analysis, process mapping.
It's right behind me. So if you're at the Huddle board and there's a visual representation of what's happening with the process, either in a value stream map or on some level of process flow on their performance board, it brings us as leaders closer to the daily work that's being done by the team. I never knew anything about this process until I worked with this model cell group. Now I have a pretty good idea what providing technical assistance is in the hiccup process. That's knowledge I'll probably never use again as long as I live, but it's really fascinating. Now, if I was a manager, that might be helpful if I thought I knew what that was. And what I heard was when I worked with the team, through the discussion amongst the people that were working with each other in the team, that not everybody was in agreement that they knew what that was either. Very fascinating. So engaging the Gemma will help us understand the process. When we work with team members and we talk about process improvement, one of the things that you have a responsibility, I'm just going to impose this on you as a manager or a leader, is you have to be the voice of the customer. So the customer in this particular instance was CMS. And when we went through the process of that, I played a surrogate role of saying, well, CMS probably wants their reports on time. They probably want it with a certain quality level, and they probably want a level of customer experience when working with you that they wanted. So I played a surrogate role, even though some of the team members played that role as well. But your role as a leadership level is also to be a voice of the customer, whatever that process is. So a surrogate if your customer isn't there. And then look for flow. The work should flow, the people should flow, the technology should flow. So when you're working in structured Camel Walks, you should be able to see things working on a nice, normal, level pattern. That it shouldn't be hectic, chaotic, or firefighting. A lot of which is what we see in organizations, but what we try to avoid and what Lean helps us remove from the process. There are kind of three things, three legs of the stool, if you will, that create the support for leader standard work. One is the leader routines. So these are defined routines that we express as management that takes us to the performance boards for a fixed period of time on a regular schedule with a set sort of expectations, behaviors, and questions that we utilize in order to engage in the Gemma. And these routines, sort of like doctor rounding each day in the hospital. What is the purpose of doctor rounding in the hospital? Anybody want to guess? You're kind of in the medical field. Not everybody here is. I'm not a doctor.
Peer input, they learn from experts.
Learn from experts, peer input. What else?
Teaching.
Teaching. What else? What else are doctors looking for in their rounding?
Are they looking at their patients?
Pardon?
Are they looking at their patients?
Yeah, they're looking at their patients. Your patients are processes and/or expected outcomes of work of people. What else are they doing?
Sharing experiences.
Sharing experiences. They're trying to find problems that might be happening in a particular area, either in the capabilities of the people or the capabilities of the hospital system. You know, when they do their rounding, they might say, why is this here? If they come in with a gurney with somebody on it, we can't get past this. This needs to be moved. Or, you know, why is this person not being treated effectively in this particular area? Does somebody not have a capability that they need in order to do that? Oh, by the way, I need to teach this person, you know, how to intubate somebody. Whatever those things are, right? So rounding, leader routines here, happen at successive levels. So the team members huddle. First line supervisors or managers, I don't know how many layers you have here. We do this with organizations, we might have 13 layers. Have different levels of responsibilities, but they all have a rounding routine all the way up to, we were just talking this morning about Ted's rounding routine. So what's good for the goose, good for the gander, we're all going to participate in this. So that we laying out a schedule, he's laying out his schedule. So there are leader routines as a part of this. Visual process performance, that may be performance boards, it might be other additional things in the work area. One of the things that I see in areas that are more transactional, when I'm looking to the Medicaid group, so we did the Medicaid model cell, every time I'm here, which I haven't done yet, which I want to do yet today, I go over to the library and the surrounding area. And we had them put some visuals in place around how they're managing the flow of work. And I'm trying to understand how to coach this group by seeing how they're progressing in the maturity of those visuals. Are they being honored? Are they missing some components of it or not? Who needs to be taught as it relates to us? That's visual process performance. It doesn't always apply in every area, but it almost always applies in every area in some way. And the other one is performance boards, which are the obvious one that we've chosen. Today we're going to focus on these two things mostly. Where visual process performance comes into play, we'll see about that, and your coaches will help you more with that at the time. But we need to get the performance boards started and being built, and we need to get the routines understood so that as we start to take responsibilities for those in the future, we're going to know what I'm talking about. So part of what I want to show you is everybody has a different level of responsibility for what they're focusing on. So the frontline staff that's doing the work every day, their job is to eliminate waste out of the process. Their primary tools are standard work, which are the work procedures beneath each one of these steps that tell us how to do the job in a consistent way. Kaizen, or you can replace that with model cell, and the A3, which is a problem-solving tool that you've either experienced or your team members are utilizing. If you look at the middle of this process, their responsibility is taking variation out of the process. So what is affecting the process and my people, and what variation can I control? Additionally, what is the overburden related to poor process design? So in this particular process, this is the future state, but the current state never finished on time, had tons of rework in the process, and even though it had customer satisfaction, the burden on the employees was all stacked at the very end of the process, so that it was a massive fire drill for everybody, including the leadership that had to participate, Patricia and Claire, in a fire drill to get it done at the end of every month or every quarter. So that's overburden. And people had to work weekends in order to do it. So I thought we were professionals, we could get this done during the week. So that's what I'm talking about. So poor process design is our responsibility. It isn't the team members that are doing the work. They have a responsibility to take waste out and give us ideas about how to improve the process. But the dang process design, we, in a lot of ways, impose on them. So that's our accountability to help improve. So we need to understand these value stream maps. We also need to understand the A3 process as well, the problem-solving process, so we can effectively coach people to change process. The executive or senior management team has a lot of accountability for deploying the corporate goals, strategic and departmental, down to us so that we know we're working on the right things, right? And so that's part of what your leadership team is doing. Their job is to remove variation externally from iPro. So if they have CMS or marketplace things that they need to do, and too many priorities. If we have too many priorities, nobody can focus, so their job is to create a more narrow focus so that we can all execute with ease and accountability. One of the ways that we make sure that everyone's understanding the staff is taking waste out, us as the management group are making sure that we're taking variation and overburden out of the process. Leaders, as they're accountable for taking and making sure that we have the right priorities that are taking, insulating us against the marketplace wherever possible, and then also creating a focus on those priorities. That's a really valuable thing. Then we take our Camel Walks, which is going from board to board, taking responsibility for that, and identifying any of those problems along the way within our level of accountability. So if you take a typical manager, I don't know who a typical manager is. Maybe that's a name for somebody at some point. But if you have a manager that manages 3 teams, okay, so I'm going to make something up. Let's say Ann has 3 teams. I don't know how many teams you have or not, Ann. Let's say you have 3 teams. And you have, maybe there are supervisors that report for you or other managers. And underneath those teams, there's 15 people in each team. In this process that I am proposing to the organization, they saw that intermountain healthcare, and that we're helping develop here, and would have a performance board for her overall work. And she would have, each one of those managers would have a performance board below them, or supervisors or work teams would have a performance board below them. And rather than the old-fashioned Haight-Ashbury management by walking around, she would have a very scheduled routine that she would perform on an ongoing basis to interact with the performance boards that she's accountable for. And the idea is that she's looking to see that they're aligned effectively with the boards above her, at her level, and below, and that the actions that people take and the capabilities they take are progressive. And so that Camel Walk, this is not a management by walking around, is a scheduled, there should be a D at the end of that, consistent, published, observed process. So it's an actual map. I'll show you an example. This should be a physical map, predetermined, with quick stops and deep dives. So there is the potential for two layers of this. One is that we go to performance boards, and that's probably where we're going to start as an organization here at iPro. The other one is sometimes we go directly into the work, where the work is being done at a particular desk, and we see if people are following for provide technical assistance, the standard work procedures, what's working and what's not working as it relates to that, so that we understand a little more closely, directly to where the work is being done, whether or not this system and process that we have in place is effective and working the way we expect it to, or we're getting feedback of what's wrong, what's different, and we should be talking about how we continuously improve it.
Chris, you keep bringing up this idea of like boards being aligned with one another and then like having them kind of like wrap up into another separate board.
Right.
And I guess I'm struggling with how they're aligning with one another because our work in our department, and I'm sure this is similar in others, is very disparate, right? So like we have completely different projects going on at different times. So are you implying that we should be measuring like quality, for instance, across boards, or timeliness across boards in some way? Is that like an aligned?
We're going to talk about that
Okay.
in more detail when we get to the boards. Right now I'm talking about when we get to those gambas, and I keep saying that like somehow that mysteriously appears out of the darkness. And I know that that is a very hard thing to do. When we went to Intermountain, their boards were aligned. They're 8 years in. So lower your expectations. We're going to start with a lot of boards that are very rough outlines that aren't well aligned. But as we build them and we start to do these Camel Walks, we'll start to get an observation of what's not aligned, and we can take nice, slow, steady steps towards improving it over as much time as it takes. So I'll give you some expectations about what end state could look like, but don't be confused that you're going to get there anytime soon.
So, Chris,
And we have agreed, or your leadership team have agreed, your executive team has agreed, that we will stumble forward but start. And we expect this. One of the questions was, Ted says, Chris, does that mean that they all have to be at the same quality when we deploy them? And Patty's answer was,
No.
Absolutely not. Not even possible. Why would we even think that we're going to get that in the beginning? If we took that approach, we would be overly prescriptive, and it wouldn't be meaningful to the work for your own areas. Today, we need to figure out how that stuff aligns. The first step is to start to create boards, start the Camel Walks. Boards first, then Camel Walk. Right now, I'm just explaining the Camel Walk, and that's what will help expose what we need to do in order to bring it together. This is a multi-year journey you're on. It's a fundamental change to the way that you do things today. So this map is scheduled, known, and published. Each area is viewed with the same criteria. The leader observes the lead maturity, and the leader asks questions and listens. So in a typical Camel Walk, we're not there to direct what's happening. It's our accountability to learn what's happening at each level. Go ahead.
so again, trying to visualize, but we'll get to it later. So the Camel Walk, I could see a manager that has many different processes or people underneath him. So if you have one or two people reporting to you and you're kind of separate from the other people in your department, what are you walking? I can see
So-
our VP walking and seeing the
That's
different boards. But for us
This is
individually,
this is a generic set of information
Yeah.
for us to figure out what works well at iPro. So there may be no bond, but there may be you get to the next level that isn't in here, but there may be a crosswalk where you go with someone else on their walk, because when we get too close in our own foxhole, sometimes we don't see how other people are progressing and we don't learn. There may be boards that are set up that are interactive across processes, where you might participate in more than one board. I don't know yet. Those are things we're gonna have to figure out. There would be probably a team board. I expect there's gonna be a team board that you're gonna have with your team about goals and objectives of what you're trying to do, and it might even include some things that other people are doing that interrelate to you, that there would be a board there. And then each of those questions we'll have to address individually, and you'll work with your coaches on to talk about how you set up the mechanics of that. And one of the things that we talked about with Ted and team earlier was, so we're gonna say that everybody's gonna be doing boards here before, excuse me, the end of the year. How many boards is that? And the best answer to that question is, don't know. We're gonna have to start and see what the right level is. This is typical commitments that we often see by different people at different levels in the organization. So the first line where the work is being done every day, there's huddle meetings. They could be daily, bi-weekly, weekly. Today you've had some team members that are in your model cells that are doing bi-weekly. Some of them are weekly. It has to be appropriate level for the work that's being done. And we can talk about the science of that later. It's time commitments, 10 to 15 minutes per huddle. People say to me, well, I don't have time for another meeting. Well, you have time for lots of wasteful meetings. Why don't we do 10 to 15 minutes on a huddle meeting where we talk about, are we ahead or behind? What are we doing to improve the process? And any other relevant information we have, 10 to 15 minutes out of the day. For middle management, whatever that means, there's a routine where they're huddling either weekly or bi-weekly or monthly or bi-monthly at their board, where they have team members from the other teams that come to their board and they talk about it. I'm not saying you have all of these layers. And maybe that's the walk, it's not the huddle. The walk is going to see the other boards for board review, okay? Everybody's own huddle is only 10 to 15 minutes, okay? Except for maybe Ted's huddle. Ted's huddle might be a little longer than that because he has a different level of responsibility with the executive team and all that. But the structured Gemba walk, the routine for the board review, is probably about 30 minutes. I don't know. Maybe it's 20 minutes. Maybe it's 40 minutes. It depends on how many boards that person's hitting. If any other, right? So that all has to be calculated. I'm just telling you what a routine looks like. For the senior leadership, maybe it's a monthly Camel Walk. They're going to different site locations in order to do that. If they have different teams at different locations. So nobody's excluded out of this. Albany, North Carolina, Virginia, everybody's going to have boards, and leadership will physically go at some times to those boards and do their Camel Walks. And even Ted will be doing some structured Gemba walks. I don't know if it's this quarterly or not, but he's got a lot of different places and people to see at all different levels. And he'll be going to boards as well that are his direct report boards and some of your team boards. So the idea is that he has an understanding about how things are progressing from a maturity perspective, a lean maturity perspective across the organization, and how people are learning about problem solving and how people are engaged in that. So early on in the model cells, I said, not as a threat, as a way to communicate, that management will be coming to your boards and trying to get an understanding of them for their own edification and also as a part of the Gemba Walk process. People say to me, seriously? And I went, yeah, seriously. So we're getting there now. This is what's going to be happening with the Gemba Walk process. This is an example of a Gemba Walk by a senior IT leader in an organization out on the East Coast. And that senior IT leader had a very structured walk. This was about a 45-minute walk, and they started at this location. They went to the division performance board. Then they went on to departmental performance board. They went to where a Scrum team was working in IT. They went down to where system monitoring was done, where QA was done, And it was a very scheduled path. And again, there was some structured questions that this person asked at each location. We're looking at cascading information, and they're looking at the progress of the maturity of lean throughout the organization and people's capabilities. They were also seeing what problems the organization was encountering that they should be accountable to know and or support, but not give solutions to work with the right people so that they can find solutions. And we go to the next slide. So this is the outline exercise I did with your leadership team. We can come back to that. Next slide, please. There's three basic questions that we expect leaders to ask on their Camel Walk. So again, this Camel Walk is not a here's what I need you to do based on what I see. Just do what I say. I actually had a manager at one point in one of my operational areas that had a sign that said, "For best results, do things my way." It was supposed to be a joke, but the people that worked for her knew it wasn't a joke. And we want to change that to us being servant leaders, which I'm sure you're already working towards or already do here, which means engaging the team, understanding is their work clearly defined or not. In other words, people have a pretty good idea what they need to do every way, but is the definition of that and the expected outcomes of that, is that obvious to everyone? I mean, when we started working on this hiccup value stream map behind me, each one of those process performance boxes there, there was a lot of discussion about what that actually was. What were the actual work procedures that did that? So a lot of people saw it in a lot of different ways. That's why standard work is so crucial to what we do. So getting to the bottom of is the work clearly defined or not is something that we can ask people. What gets in the way of getting your work done? You could add every day to that, or most days. You know, in other words, we're trying to understand how many disruptions you have in the flow of your work every day. The next one is, what support do you need to be effective or successful? Maybe another good word there, in your daily work. You know, can I support you in some way? So it flips the model from do things the way I say to how can I support you more effectively, and is your work well defined and does it flow on an ongoing basis? So I am learning and I'm trying to find the best way to support you. The key is sort of like, you know, so I don't mean to expose the learning and development we have to do together, but even when we're together at the last time in your model cell work, and Carrie was there as well, and I said, is the board helping us understand if we're ahead or behind? Is the board helping us make explicit the continuous improvement work? And the team looked at me and said, no. And I said, well, then the performance board isn't doing what it's supposed to do. And Carrie said, she says, I'm tearing it all down. And everybody's like, well, wait a minute. She said, nope, tearing it all down. And she did. And we said, let's just start over. So the point is let's evolve to serve purpose. So purpose of the performance board is, we're going to get into those details. Do we know what the goal is? Operationally, are we hitting it or not? And what's it telling us if we're not? So can we adjust around it? What is our continuous improvement and what communication we need to have with people? If it's not helping us with those things, we need to look at it and say, how can we make it help? Because the huddle is a short way for us to convene to do that. Now, when it comes to the Camel Walk, the purpose is understanding if everyone's connected across the goal. Okay? Understanding if people know that problem solving is a key component of their work. Do they see the problems? What gets in the way of getting their work done? And a forum for helping them exchange with us as leaders what we need to know about supporting them in an effective way. So if we could do that electronically or in person or however, through space, I don't know what it is, we achieve the purpose, we achieve what we're trying to do. That's what I'm more worried about. So that's why I would say we're not overly prescriptive on any of these things. Let's keep the purpose in mind. Let's do the work, and then let's start and let's try. So, if you need to, after you get your board all set up and you don't like it, call Carrie. She'll help you tear it down. It was great. Performance boards are at all different levels of the organization. And again, their purpose is to align the goals, the process, and the execution of the process, the continuous improvement work, and the people overall to the next layer up and to the customer, right? So if we talk about lean, we talk about customer value, making sure that we're delivering customer value. When we looked at the value stream map, one of the things that we talked about was what is the customer value. In this particular instance, it was a report that was delivered on time and accurate with all of the components that CMS needs, okay? So the performance board associated with this is focused on delivering that while at the same time linking the performance of this process to IPRO's performance, right? So you have some minimum requirements to stay in business as an organization that have to be achieved. You have to make a certain financial responsibility, right? You can only do this for so much. If everyone here was bought a Learjet to move to go to work and back, you probably price yourself out of the marketplace, nonprofit or not, right? So there's some level of expectation around cost. There's some level of expectation around the people that work with you having the right customer experience. There's some level of expectation around the people that work here and them having this a nice place to work. So we say those things in safety, cost, quality, delivery, employee engagement, and customer experience are part of every organization in some way, and part of every value stream, every process in some way. Not everyone is measured the same way, not everyone is measured on all those components, but they should roll up to the organization. That organization, managing both the expectations of the customer and what it needs to do from an iPro perspective to be in business, needs to be represented on that board in some way. Keep in mind that performance boards, the performance board at 10th level is very strategic. The performance board at the Kentucky, what's the process in Kentucky that we do, the MCD process in Kentucky, is very tactical. Much more technical, right? Still has a strategic component, but compared to Ted's board, it's got a different sort of a tone to it, right? And in between is in between. Seems obvious, Chris, right? The question is how much is strategic and how much tactical, right? So components, if you're looking at the screen right now, the components that I expect in a performance board aren't always, every one of these aren't on every board, but there's some value in achieving each one of these four channels, these four major categories on your performance board. And none of them are going to look the same. It's okay. So let me say, under purpose, you can quantify goals that you're trying to achieve, that are departmental goals, that are company goals, but they're helping people see what the important thing is at the level in the organization that you're trying to create focus on for people to be able to both drive their actions and behaviors in their operation and or help achieve the strategic nature of what you're trying to do in your department. But there should be some goal information of sort. So if I use this hiccup process, the goal is to deliver the report uploaded to DDST with from 0.38 to 0.64 days worth of effort. Okay, that's the goal. That's the ongoing operational goal that we have to get to. Okay, with a lead time of 2.78 or 4.8 days, percentage complete and accurate of 58%. There's some measure of measurement that we're trying to hit from a goal perspective for every department that should link up to Ted's board in some way. Is it going to link up to Ted's board by the end of the year if we start these now? No. No, absolutely not. There's no chance. So that's okay, right? Because the first thing we need to do is get these goals out there and documented. There's another initiative, which I'm sure you're aware of. I think Judy's intimately aware of it, that KPI initiative to try and help create alignment around KPIs. So if you have the corporate goals and leadership goals, and you have the KPI effort, and we have the performance boards being built, those three things will converge. And let's not worry about when, let's just worry about getting them all improving, and then starting the process of getting them linked together through the Camel Walks in order to figure out what we need to do to bring them closer together. But if we don't do those three pieces somewhat simultaneously, we'll never get there. So it's okay that we're not going to get there now, and it's okay that we're not fully mature on each one of those areas, but we need to start each piece of the process. So today, when we start to do these purpose goals, you'll put down whatever purposes you know today, what goals you're trying to achieve, and we'll start to see how this stuff links together. Process is today's process. How is today's process performing? Are we achieving the goals that we set for the daily execution of the work, or weekly, or whatever it is? Are we ahead or behind? If you don't know if you're ahead or behind, you're either lucky or waiting for a train wreck. One of the two. So are you ahead or behind? That should become obvious. Things that we find in there, maybe a current state value stream map, so we know what we're supposed to be doing from this future state is now a current state. The level of tasks / what is the inventory of our work? How many tasks do we have outstanding? I don't know. How we're doing the service level performance, the cost, quality, and delivery. Those main measures that we think about with every process. I don't know, red, yellow, green, are we ahead or behind? And then maybe performance Pareto tracking. What's been going wrong, and are we documenting that? So that we're learning about the things that go wrong on an ongoing basis in our daily work. Those are kind of key components we often see in that category. Plan, do, check, adjust. This is your continuous improvement. PDCA is the Deming cycle. Plan, do, check, adjust. What are you doing to improve the work as well as doing the work? Which is one of the lean expectations that we have. Right? We have a daily process or a weekly process of meeting at the Huddle board to talk about what's working and what's not working. That's a small tactical process, and it's a standard required process, okay? And ideas can be put in an idea slot on the performance board at any time throughout the week or whatever, so that they can be reviewed in the performance board exercise, such that we will be able to quickly see or be able to process new ideas about how to improve the process. So we're requiring everyone in iPro to engage in giving us ideas about how to make things better here, and not through an old suggestion box process or some offline thing that goes out of sight, but through our team huddles. What work can we improve on an ongoing basis? So PDCA, two components. We have two components. One is every day or every when we meet, the improvement activity that we talk about. The other one is the model cell work. So that's a more industrial, we're going to take on changing this process. Both of those components should be visible. What are we doing on an ongoing basis? Okay, to improve things, and we might find those with the improvement idea tracking and collection of new improvement ideas and just meeting at the Huddle board. The other thing is, what are we doing to improve the overall value stream? It's the continuous part of continuous improvement that we have to observe. And that is taking that type of activity and doing it internally and creating a new model cell, revisiting the existing value stream, maybe drawing another future state map and driving toward it. The fourth category is people-oriented thing. And oftentimes this is sort of coverage matrix for something for the department, so that it's very easy and visual to say if somebody's out, here's what we need to do. I've also seen a lot of teams build a skills matrix to say, we perform these 13 functions, and I'm capable in this many of them, blah, 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 so that we've got easy failover for different things. There could also be announcements as it relates to anything that's coming up. Don't forget to do your, ethics training by the end of, September or whatever it is. Are we out of September? Not yet. By the end of September. But it's just more of a people-oriented one. Sometimes some teams use it for sort of celebratory things. So-and-so's birthday cake's next Tuesday. Wish that person a happy birthday, but don't bring up their age. Whatever those things that are important to the team. But we want to have purpose. So what are the goals we're trying to achieve? We want to have process. What are we trying to do with today's work that we're driving and trying to deliver on? We want PDCA, continuous improvement. So how do we do continuous improvement, right? And then we want to have anything oriented to people on our performance board. And again, this is just a guideline. Okay? Not all the boards are going to look the same, and not all of them are necessarily going to have all components of each category. But part of what we're going to do here today is you're going to build, so both on the phone and here in this room, you're going to build the outline for your performance board that you will have for yourself or your team. That's the goal. Those of you that are in the room will help set these big pieces of paper up on the wall over there. And maybe we'll cut them in half or something, and everyone will have a section of paper, and maybe you could use the sticky paper over there to start to build your own performance board. We're going to start building one now. You are for your teams, not me. So the rest of this is not about working effort here today. So let's get started. Blue tape, paper, wall, markers, up you go. And I want you to put what the departmental goals are that you would want to express to your team in that area.
I mean, I kind of said that to myself, but I didn't.
Reinforce here, I'm going to look at your purpose and I'd say, do I see goals that the group is trying to achieve? And do I see that they're starting to think about that linkage to what we're trying to do overall as an organization? And maybe that's not clear yet, but I'm starting to see those departmental goals that can be communicated to the people in the work group about two things. One, how is our customer being served? And again, how is IPRO achieving its corporate goals as an organization? Gotta have both, right? Can't live without one or the other, or short of one. When I get to your process section, as an outsider, I want to get to your process and I want to say, do these people know if they're ahead or behind or not? That's what's going on inside of my head. And when I look at whatever you have written, if it doesn't tell me that you're either ahead or behind in the work chunks that you do on an ongoing basis, I'm going to say to myself, uh-oh, what do we need to do here to make ahead or behind visible? Because if you don't know if you're ahead or behind, you're either lucky and dangerously lucky, or going to get landed on in some way, or in some way uninformed about your work. We want to have that visualization at a glance that says, I know if I'm ahead or behind. And if you're behind, it's still okay as long as you know. And then we can talk about what actions to get back to being either on SLA or above, driving towards the goal. So, and anything you can make visual is great. In PDCA, there's two levels. One level is the daily, we meet at the huddle, and we need to figure out what to do with the crash cart, right? In order to make sure that it's 100% stocked. And then we listen to ideas and, we say, Paul, you had an idea last week that says we need to put these things on the crash cart and this label here. Did we get that? Yes, okay. That's the managing daily improvement. That's a small idea that the team is getting on an ongoing basis. Okay? Just says we can improve the process or something weird's happening with the process, we can cope with it. The managing daily improvement, MDI. The other thing is, what are we doing a little more strategically about improving the process. That might be a problem-solving A3, or it could be we've got an upcoming model cell event. Okay? But that's usually it's some kind of an A3 or a project format or something that shows about the important sort of strategic things that we're improving. That's sort of the PDCA portion of that. This is also the area where we would have a small section with idea cards where anybody can come back and drop ideas at any time. And in our daily huddle, we'd read the idea cards and talk about, oh, in order to fix the crash cart, Paul said, put a label over here and make it yellow if it isn't filled. Oh, okay, let's do that. But the idea section goes there as well. This is a huddle board, one of 4 that are out in your organization, one that happened to be close by that I could get to quickly. And you can see it has some of the components of the categories you're talking about, but again, it's been customized how many times, Ann?
A million.
Almost literally.
I'm rounding down too.
At least 100, right? So a lot. And really what part of the evolution of it was trying to say, what is it as it relates to the department? And it's going to go through more evolutions as we bring the KPIs closer together and we bring the corporate goals closer together. It's going to go through more evolutions to do that. So are they ever done? No. I hate to say this, from a lean perspective, is anything ever done?
No.
No. We're just getting closer to better all the time, and that's our goal. Okay, so, Ann, you want to tell us a little bit about what's on your board here?
So I was just saying that the upper left-hand quadrant is our continuous quality improvement. So this is our PDCA section of the board, and here we have our value stream map. So like all the steps that are involved in our PIP process. That's the topic that this board represents. We have our ideas box, and so here people put in ideas, and then we track them on this log. And this basically shows who submitted the idea, what it was, our follow-up to that idea, and our status bar. Like so, if it's green, it means check, we followed up with that idea, it's either been implemented or not, and we cite the reasons for that. And then if it's yellow, we're, we really are only using 2 colors, green or this yellow color, to show that, well, we may have followed up with the individual, but the idea hasn't gained traction yet because of these reasons. And so this kind of just gives us a sense of where we are with each idea.
And for those of you that can't see this, the idea cards here show the problem that's been identified, crash cart not missing, tourniquet, whatever, name. So who submitted the idea? This is not an anonymous process, and the reason is we need to know so we can give recognition to the person that came up with the idea to fix something. This is that valuing problem thing. In addition to that, we may need to talk to them and find out more about what is this problem they identified, date, related to safety, quality, people, financial stewardship, customer satisfaction, unit specific, suggestions. So if you have a suggested idea, then who, what, and when for the ownership piece of it. But in the beginning, you can fill out this section of it, drop it into the idea thing, and at the next cycle of huddle meeting, anything in this bucket gets reviewed, and then it eventually gets moved on to this board. So, sorry, go on.
No, please, one more. The next section on the upper right-hand corner is our performance and process monitoring, and here was the most difficult part of our board, and this is the part that we really needed a lot of work with over time, and we still do. I mean, even it's funny, after our conversation today about Carrie coming right down the board, I had gone to speak with her, and she's like, I think we need to redo the board again. I was like, yes, Carrie, absolutely, And it's really good that, we're all transparent with each other, and we, allow that continuous improvement process to take place even within the board itself. So anyway, our performance process monitoring is really basically around our work instructions for one of our states in particular. And so here is when we set kind of like the standard or our estimate of how long the work takes. And then we evaluated, okay, is what we're actually doing following the estimate. It's pretty much a high level of what this represents. And then we sent out a survey to our clients and collaborators, our stakeholders, right? And so we've tracked response rate of that survey, and then where we are in terms of our data analysis, which is still in process, but we're getting there. And then once we do analyze the data associated with that survey, we'll put it up there just as another way that we're monitoring our process and our performance to date. People resources, our state trainings that took place, our upcoming trainings, what we're going to expect coming up. Resources we added to this section. For us, we thought that was important because we are using some new resources in our department, one of which is Smart Sheets. And then the last section of our board is our internal and external adoption. And so here, through our lean MCD, model cell, we had come up with a lot of different changes to a lot of our templates, for instance, and part of our processes. And so we wanted to track by state and by process and or template the adoption rate, because we have a lot of states, there's a lot of different templates that we use, and so we had to kind of figure out a way to track adoption. So we use a green, yellow, and red kind of temperature gauge there to evaluate whether we're ahead or behind in our adoption and how we can better target that. So at each of our huddles, we talk about this, how we're going to encourage adoption either internally or externally, and basically go from there.
And that's great. You can see if you're ahead or behind. That's the important thing, right? So kudos for being ahead in a Camel Walk. Coming to you, anybody comes to you on a Camel Walk and says, tell me about these red sections, and if there's any adjustments being made, they can understand if they need extra support or anything in order to make that happen, which is a great thing. It's not a bad thing. The worst thing that we see when we go to work with people on performance boards is if they have all green. That means either they're lying to themselves or they can't see the problem. One of the two. Either way, it's a bad scenario. The other cool thing about this is you guys got nice standard huddles on Wednesdays at 1:45. Carrie said I could take this a few minutes ago because the huddle was just done. So everybody knows when it is. It's posted openly in the work area. Everybody knows where it is. It's not hidden somewhere else. But generally, it helps people visualize both the goals, the work that's being done, and the improvements are being made overall. So when the team gets together, they can have a meaningful conversation around that. So is it doing it all that we want it to do today? Probably not. That's okay. It's continuous improvement as it relates to this and the performance boards too. Does that make sense? You have a lot of words on your huddle boards right now. That's okay. That's usually where we start, because we're struggling with the fact that I think we had a great conversation over here. It's like we're sort of oriented by contract today. So should we have contract boards? And my challenge to you as a group is to say, why don't we have team boards, even though they may have responsibilities against contracts, because you're going to create KPIs at the corporate level that are not contract KPIs. Those are sort of built into the contract, but as goals for the organization that become departmental goals that come down to your team goals. And so we ended up talking a little bit more about, the question I asked you was, if I worked for you, how would you evaluate me in my annual review? And what we ended up talking about was, did you do your work on time? Was it at the quality it needed to be? And so on. And that's where I was thinking, okay, that's where, can we look at the department that way? Rather than by contract, can we say we completed our work on time as a group, and we completed it with a quality level that we expected, and then contracts could be an underlying piece of that, and we can look at each one of them and say, what do we need to do to adjust to continuously improve along the way? So it's a bit of a challenge in the beginning here to try and wrap your brain around where we're trying to go. But you're going to have coaches to help you with this. You got Patty and Judy to help you with this, and other experienced people that are already doing it. And you shouldn't be afraid to say, I started in one place, I'm going to end up somewhere else. That's not, shouldn't be depressing, that should be invigorating to say we're evolving, this is the way we need to go. But it's my understanding from the leadership team is that this is no longer optional, and we're going to do it. The question is how and when and in one organizational fashion. And so my expectation that I'm going to set is I'm going to come back, Sarah and I are going to be here in October, and we're going to want to go to boards with you and look at boards and talk about boards. So theory sort of gone, we'll talk about sort of next level of that, but also we want to talk about where you're at, and you've got some boards started in different ways that we can look at as examples and all learn from each other, just like kind of pulling in at the end here. This board that's been around for how long have we been working on this board? Year?
Yeah, at least.
At least. Longer than that? Maybe longer than that? Already to get to this level, okay? And She just said we're tearing it down again. So that's okay, but it looks pretty dang good to me, and we're getting there. It's making stuff visible and visual to have meaningful conversations, and it's gonna evolve again. And it won't magically happen at once. There'll be lots of disruptions and disconnections in the process. That's okay. Just keep that in mind. The other thing is take these with you and start thinking after tomorrow when you're whole management team and you see some of the linkages that are coming with the KPIs, what you need to think about in order to get this kind of conformed into your goal section and what you're monitoring from a process perspective to know what that linkage is. And it doesn't mean that something that you do in the process department links directly to and measurably right to the corporate goal, but if you've got a customer satisfaction goal for HCIP, there'll be a customer satisfaction goal, probably measured with Net Promoter Score or something else at the corporate level. You know you're contributing in some way in that category. If there isn't a measuring linkage today, maybe it'll be down there somewhere down the road, but think about those things from that perspective. Those KPIs on those corporate level things, you want to impose that thinking on your mind as it comes back to your own team. Are we measuring cost? Are we measuring quality? Are we measuring on-time delivery within our service level? Are we, do we have satisfied team members? It's an important part of this process. What is our customer satisfaction? I mean, I would like to see iPro on the outside of the airplane at Delta that says, Delta is the number 3 employer of choice in the U.S., right behind iPro. You know, why not, right? So employee engagement causes that, right? So employee engagement we think is really important. If the process doesn't work for the team members that do it, that's not good either. And then customer experience or customer quality, how we are measuring the customer interaction with it, super important, right? So think about those categories and how you say, how do I reorient my team around that? Thank you for your attendance and participation in today's session. Don't forget the most important thing is to take action, learn, and adjust as you go. Good luck in your lean journey.